Heyo, I'm back to talk about argument writing again. I apologize for not including my face this time, although that's probably a good thing for most of you. But I thought it'd be better if you could see the full screen and the things I'm referring to rather than my crazy looking antics in the corner of the screen. So this is purely going to be audio. I do want to cover a couple things. What you're looking at is now what I call kind of the meaty part of looking at argument writing. It's time to look at something that has a lot of depth to it, that doesn't list out the pros and cons very obviously for you, and try to understand what it is the person who wrote it is trying to make you believe in. So for this one, I went to a text that many of your teachers are going to share with you called Oh Rats. It comes out of a book called Oh Rats. And in this excerpt, which is set up like an essay style, I'm going to take some time to talk a little bit about the word relevant, which I said I would do that. I'll point out things that I believe are relevant in the passage. And we will also take a look at what your pros and cons list should look like when you're done reading a passage like that. So here we go. The question that the author is kind of getting us to think about is, are rats good? Now, my first reaction, like anybody's reaction, is, heck no, rats are awful. But you've got to read the text before you can make that decision, because the guy went ahead and wrote a whole book on it. So here we go. It begins, everything about rats makes it a champion at survival. Now, I stopped when I saw this. That word champion gave me pause, because it's a very particular, specific word. It sounds like a good thing. I mean, who doesn't want to be a champion of something, right? So when you call the rat a champion at survival, it sounds like a good thing. Let's see if he proves that point. Of all the mammals, only humans have been more successful, at least so far. Just think about what a rat can do. It can squeeze through a pipe the width of a quarter, scale a brick wall straight up, fall off a 5-story building and land safely on its feet, rear up on its hind legs and box with its front paws, get flushed down a toilet and live, and climb up a drain pipe into a toilet bowl. Okay, as far as I can tell, we pretty much can't do most of these things. I was impressed by this line, just think about what a rat can do. It sounds so positive. You know, it's like, just think about all the things that we can accomplish if we work together. That's kind of the tone I got out of that. Again, this seems to be leaning towards rats are good for us. Let's go further. The rat's body is built for survival. Well, that was as obvious a topic sentence as I've ever seen. So I just made note of that, because obviously he's going to keep talking about how it can survive. A rat can collapse its skeleton, allowing it to wriggle through a hole as narrow as 3/4 of an inch. An adult rat's jaws are hundreds of times more powerful than a person's. Large muscles allow it to bite down with a force of 7,000 pounds per square inch, about the same force as a crocodile's jaws. Its teeth are stronger than both copper and lead. So you got a long list of facts about just how powerful or amazing a rat is at surviving, and specifically how its body helps it to survive. It can collapse its skeleton, go through very small areas. It's got super strong muscles in its jaws. All of these are impressive. I mean, no matter what you think about a rat, that's pretty amazing that their force for their biting, for example, approximates what a crocodile's jaws can do. All of it seems intent on making me like rats or believe that they're good. So far, I'm kind of believing it. Next paragraph. Gnawing through bone and wood is no problem for a rat. A sheet of iron of 1/2 inch thick is no problem either. Rats gnaw through iron cabinets to get at food and concrete to get various minerals they need to build bones and teeth. Rats have even gnawed through dam walls, starting floods that wash away entire villages. All right, this one I'm only going to point out that I actually laughed at this word. I know I'm an adult. I'm not supposed to, but when I read it the first time, rats have even gnawed through dam walls, I thought they were mad at the walls. But no, they mean the kinds that hold back water. So let's move on to the next part. We do not know when the first rat scurried aboard a ship. Most likely, it happened about 3,000 years ago, when our distant ancestors first built and sailed ships. Being fast learners, rats found that life was good aboard ship. The dark, damp storage areas below deck held everything they needed for a healthy, ratty existence. They drank from the barrels of fresh water kept for the crew. They feasted on sacks of grain and other foods meant for the crew and for sale in distant markets. Ship's cargo, particularly cloth, made for warm, cozy nests. Okay. I didn't talk as much about this, but I'm going to point out right away, I noticed something about the entire sort of tone. I mean, I'm reading this like in a fun way. Like, this is all great stuff for rats, and they're having a barrel living off of the things that we put on ships, and they're making a nice, cozy existence for themselves. So that's all positive. But what really got me was this line here, being fast learners. You know, that's as good a trait as any for something that is living and can think. You want to be a fast learner because it's the best way to survive. This sounds very positive in terms of rats. Oddly enough, despite sailors' hatred of rats, their presence aboard seagoing vessels gave the crews a feeling of security, that everything was normal. Yet seeing rats swarming on deck, much less rats leaping overboard, was a sure sign of trouble. This made sense, for if a ship sprang a bad leak, the rats knew about it before the crew, since their hiding places below deck filled with water. To avoid being trapped, they scurried topside and then leapt overboard. When sailors saw them do so, they knew their ship was doomed. When the cry went up, "Lower the lifeboats!" we still say that people fleeing danger and panic are like rats leaving a sinking ship. Even when a ship was moored at dockside, sailors kept an eye on rats. If they noticed rats leaving their ship, crewmen would refuse to go aboard because rats sense trouble even when humans saw nothing to fear. All right, so going back to the beginning of this long paragraph where it says, sailors hated rats, but their presence aboard the ships gave them a feeling of security. So that's kind of a juxtaposed sentence, meaning we have two opposite ideas here. The sailors are being clear. They don't like rats, right? Because they're eating all their food and destroying all their materials. On the other hand, they recognize that rats actually provided a safety measure for them. If they saw rats climbing aboard to the top deck, it meant something was wrong below. If rats were getting off a ship or refused to board a ship, then they knew there was something wrong with that ship and they would not get on. So, in a very strange way, rats were good for sailors. Today, breeders raise rats for pets, just like dogs and cats. Now, I'm going to stop right here. I highlighted this today. No, maybe I didn't. Pardon me. Yes, I did. I highlighted this because what I'm noticing is there is a change from talking about the past to rats today. And the reason I'm going to bring this up is because now I'm going to get to that word relevant. When we talk about rats way back in the days of sailing on wooden ships, what do I care? I mean, I don't get on wooden boats anymore, and we don't deliver our stuff by wooden boats. It really doesn't matter to us. What I care about is today. I want to know, how are rats good for me today? So we're going to take a look at the word relevant for a second. So here's the sentence. Some students like to believe that rules are not relevant to them. Well, I wasn't the only one running, so the rule doesn't apply to me. Sorry, but that's not relevant. Relevant means it relates to the topic. If the rule says you're not supposed to run, it relates to everybody. It doesn't matter if somebody else was running and was getting away with it. So it doesn't mean you get to run. Here's another one. The dog owner hoped to buy toys for her pet that would be relevant to it. So buying a cat scratching post would be an example of something not relevant to the dog or to the owner's goal. If you're trying to get something that'll make your dog happy, don't go buying a cat scratching post. It has nothing to do with your dog. It's not relevant to the dog. So the word relevant, really, you need to think of it as any type of information, example, statistics, or professional opinions that are closely connected to whatever your topic is. For us, it's rats. We only want to talk about rats and apparently the things that they can do that are beneficial. Jumping back here. So today, breeders raise rats for pets just like dogs and cats. Disease-free and easy to care for, a tame rat usually costs $10 to $50 and makes a wonderful pet. Owners can train these intelligent animals to do tricks, such as pulling miniature wagons and climbing ropes paw over paw. In schools, rats often join hamsters, guinea pigs, and rabbits as classroom pets. Learning to care for these animals teaches respect for all creatures. More than 550,000 American families own pet rats and mice. All right. So I made a point of highlighting this sentence. I always, and I mean always, always, always pay attention to numbers when they show up in any type of argument writing or persuasive writing. And that's because numbers are hard to argue with. Numbers really help to make a point clearer. And when I see something like there are 550,000 families that own rats or mice, it does make me think, well, maybe they're not so bad. I mean, people are going out of their way to buy them and have them as pets. They seem to like them. So that type of information you should always circle and pay attention to. Next, throughout history, people have eaten rodents. Rats are eaten in certain parts of China. As in China, rat is a popular dish in certain parts of Mexico. Grilled rat Bordeaux style is considered a delicacy in France. In West Africa, however, rats have become a key part of the diet, almost a necessity of life. According to a report by the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, rats and mice make up over 50% of the meat eaten in some parts of the country. Rat meat is rich in protein, and since no creature can live without the right proteins in its diet, some nutritionists believe rats might solve the problem of world hunger. So I was a little surprised about this one, that there's actually this thing called grilled rat Bordeaux, and it's considered a delicacy in France. But hey, what do I know? I'm not French. I don't eat there. So I learned a little something about rats being of interest to some people who want to go out and eat something different. But then I got to this, which I thought was more interesting. It says, in West Africa, however, rats have become a key part of the diet, almost a necessity of life. That seems to be supporting the idea that rats are good, right? But then I'm thinking to myself, well, you could argue up until that sentence that so what to the idea that rats can be eaten? Just because we can eat them doesn't mean we should eat them. But when this sentence comes along, the one about West Africa and it's part of their diet, that gave me pause. That made me think, you know what? The author is showing that rat meat actually has an important role here. It's not just about being a delicacy, something you eat because you want to, entertain something new. In this case, it actually serves a real purpose. It's helping people survive. I also noticed here that they mentioned the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. Again, anytime you are writing a paper or you're reading something where someone's arguing a point, if they are referring to an organization that is respected and real and doing some type of research on a topic, that information tends to be more relevant than if you say something like, well, my uncle tells me rats aren't healthy for you. One person's opinion isn't as good as an entire organization's. Always pay attention to that too. Sometimes rats befriend people. In the 1960s, during the Vietnam War, an American prisoner was held in solitary confinement by the enemy. He was not allowed to see or speak to any other person except the guard. One day, a rat wandered into his cell and sat beside his cot. The prisoner, glad to have company, fed it from his dish. In time, they became so close that the rat visited him every day. He fed it, played with it, and talked to it for hours. The rat, he said, seemed to understand him. Whether it did or not, it relieved his loneliness. When the rat failed to appear for a few days, he felt sad. When it returned minus a leg, he welcomed it as a dear friend. Okay. This is a nice story. I mean, this guy's lonely and he's in prison and he's got a friend to keep him company. Awesome. The problem I have with this is, it's relevant to the topic. It just is one lone example. And that sometimes isn't always the best for your argument. As I mentioned before, up above in this paragraph, if an entire organization shares the same idea, that's a lot better than just one simple example for one person. So always keep those things in mind. We're getting towards the end here. Wild rats are pests. They can't help themselves. It is their nature. Since they eat the same food humans do, we are constantly at war with them. Each year, according to one expert, rats in Asia consume at least 48 million tons of rice, enough to feed 250 million people. In India alone, rats eat or spoil enough grain in a year to fill a freight train 3,000 miles in length. In the United States, the Department of Agriculture estimates that rats spoil over 400,000 tons of food a year with their urine and droppings. Ooh, gross. Okay, so here's what I was thinking in this one. This feels like a transition now to the other side of the argument. I mean, if rats are supposed to be good for us and you're calling them a pest, that doesn't sound like it's a very good thing. But you got to be a careful reader here. The author follows up with this. They can't help themselves. It's in their nature to be pests. It's just what they are. They're looking for food, same as we are. They can't help it. And the problem is we share the same food. The author does go on to explain now in great detail, I mean, lots of numbers, lots of important organizations mentioned here, how rats destroy quite a lot of food. That to me is a negative, despite the fact that he says it's just part of their nature. Moreover, rats attack our buildings by gnawing wood, pipes, and walls. Their gnawing of matches and the insulation around electric wires causes fires. Bold burglars, they have stolen keys, coins, and jewelry. Apparently, they like shiny objects. Rats even chew up paper money to make their nests. So we get a lot of specifics about how rats destroy things. Not that great. Rats also bite people, nearly always at night. While prowling for food, they probably brush up against a sleeping person. When he or she moves, startling them, they bite in self-defense. The U.S. Public Health Service estimates that rats bite some 14,000 Americans every year, that should say. According to the United Nations World Health Organization, the yearly number of rat bites worldwide is around 1 million. Although this may seem like a lot, it is a very small number since 3 billion people go to bed every night. And, this is another interesting part of the article. This clearly is showing that rats are not good. I mean, they're biting people. And we include, again, some specific numbers from an organization I think we can all trust, the U.S. Public Health Service, as well as the United Nations Health Organization. But then again, the author does this little trick. Yeah, rats bite us, but it's a very small number, and they're only doing it probably because it's happening at night when they're brushing up against us. We move quickly, we spook them, and so they bite in defense. Again, not really their fault. Still not a great thing, but the author seems to be kind of okay with it. Still, I would put that on the negative side. Then it says here, last paragraph, laboratory rats have taught us a lot about how diseases attack the human body. Researchers implant cancer cells in rat bodies to show how they take root and spread. Government scientists prove that tobacco causes cancer by exposing rats to cigarette smoke. New medicines are regularly tested on rats before being used to treat sick people. For example, the human body has a natural tendency to reject transplanted hearts, eye, corneas, and other organs. By first testing anti-rejection drugs on rats, scientists have saved the lives of countless surgical patients. Now, this is kind of interesting. We've read along, we get this whole idea that rats are great at surviving. They have really amazing bodies. Rats can do all these cool things. They helped to warn sailors a long time ago. And then it kind of transitions, they're becoming pests and they're destroying food supplies and they can bite us. And then the author does this trick. He moves back into what seems to be a very positive thing for us. Rats can teach us about diseases. Rats can show us how cancer moves through a body. Rats can be testing animals that prevent us from accidentally killing people when we're testing new drugs. So that's a very good thing. So here's what I did. After having read both sides of the argument and read the article, I went and I put together a for or pro side and an against or con side. The pros and cons of that article are all listed here. And when you see them just at first glance, you kind of notice on this side, there's a lot more for the rat than against it. That doesn't mean necessarily that this is the better side of the argument. You have to look at both sides and determine for yourself what information is most relevant, in other words, most important to the topic, and then you have to make your own call. What's more important to you? Do you think it's best that we believe in rats as good because they are great at surviving and they're very smart? And they've helped sailors in the past, and they make good companions, and they're an important maybe food source. Or the fact that they destroy buildings and bite people, do you see that as something that's in the negative? Actually, this part right here, I don't know what I was thinking. Rats have helped us with science should be on that side. So I just made that move. Wow. Now when I look at it, the argument is pretty obvious that rats seem to be better rather than not so good for us. Again, though, it all comes down to what you believe sometimes. And that's all I got for you. Best way I can explain why you really want to learn about this stuff, you want to learn to argue well without the screaming part. You want to learn how to look at essays and write a good essay, a good argument essay, is because I'm seeing all these people who want to be influencers in the world, right? That's the new thing. Well, being an influencer means that you have to have a way of convincing people that what you're using or what you believe in is right. And arguing well and using relevant information is often the best way to accomplish that. All right, that's all I have to say. I hope this part, as long as it is, I hope this part helped you to understand something about how to attack and look at an argument essay. Take care.